Spoof. A humorous imitation of something, typically a film or particular genre of film, in which its characteristic features are exaggerated for comic effect. 2. A trick played on someone as a joke. And 3. More games than you probably thought. In the 2021 film No Time to Die, we saw James Bond and Felix Leiter play a small game with coins hidden in their hands. The game is a simple bluffing and guessing game, a gambling game. It's well known in pubs and playgrounds around the world, and it's called Spoof. It goes like this. Any number of players can participate, and each has 3 coins. Before the rounds begin, a penalty is established which the loser must pay to all the other players. A starting player is selected by any random method you like. Then every player conceals any number of coins in their hand and holds it out in front of them. The active player states their guess as to how many total coins are being concealed. Then every other player does the same around the circle. Some players call the word spoof to mean that there are no coins concealed. If a player does guess the total, they're out of the game. In any case, another round ensues, and eventually all but one of the players is eliminated. The last player pays the penalty, and then another round begins. Spoof is a big deal in some places around the world. A national spoofing championship has been held in the UK since 1974. The International Spoof Championships have been staged since 1983, and the Bangkok Gentlemen Spoofers was organized in 1988. It's the largest spoofing organization in Southeast Asia. Members of the British Armed Services take spoofing fairly seriously, and in fact they have custom-minted coins that they use when they're playing the spoof game. I searched the web and found quite a number of these spoofing coins. And I've discovered another game very similar that is played by the indigenous peoples along the North Pacific coast of North America. It's a game that they call Slahal, and it's played in teams, like this. The game Slahal traditionally uses small bones, and there are 2 pairs of bones, one pair with a stripe and one pair without. They also use scoring sticks, usually 10, and these are divided evenly between the teams. One team is chosen to go first, and 2 members of that team are selected to conceal a certain combination of bones. They start swapping bones back and forth for a short time, generally as they sing the chorus of a song. And when done, each player now has 2 bones. Now the other team tries to guess the position of the 2 unmarked bones. If they succeed, they get 2 bones, one marked and one unmarked, and another round ensues. If they fail, they must pay the other team a scoring stick. When a team has won all the bones, it's their turn to do the concealing. And so if you win all those scoring sticks, you win the match. The Salish tradition holds that this is a very ancient game, in fact going all the way back to the beginning of time. Not only is it played for entertainment, but conflicts are sometimes resolved by the playing of the game. And it has some ritual significance as well. Now here's another game called Spoof. This game was created in 1918 by the Milton Bradley Company, subtitled The Cheer Up Game. This one pops up on eBay quite often, and I've seen it in antique shops and thrift stores as well. In the usual hyperbole of the period, the game was advertised with this paragraph. Though as old as the Andes, I am as modern as time. I stand for joy, laughter, and speed. I stimulate the mind to alertness, quicken the eye, and train the hand to swiftness, that success may come to my adherents. I am the spirit of the game of spoof. The rule sheet in some editions have quite an extensive backstory talking about how this came from the Incans and how significant it was to the tribe. As far as I know, the Incas did not have playing cards. But at any rate, they used some stylized South American, Peruvian artwork for the cards, so they all have various designs on them. And what it is basically is musical chairs with cards, if you will. But in this case, there is no winner. This is one of those single loser games like Old Maid and others. Now the box, as you see here, contains this deck of 52 cards, and they all have signs and symbols on them. Letters in the corner so you can tell them apart. There's 4 each of the symbols in this deck. And the game also comes with these 7 batons. The colors of these is not apparently significant to the game, but it's capable of accommodating 8 players, up to 8 players. I think the minimum is supposed to be 3. And so here's how the game is played. Batons are laid out on the table, and there should be 1 less than the number of players. So we pretend we've got a 5-player game going on here. The cards get shuffled, and those are dealt out to all the players around the table until the deck runs out. Now that means that your final count per player, the number of cards they get, is not going to be even, but that's okay. It doesn't really affect the gameplay at all. Round and round and round you go. So you end up with quite a fan of cards here when you're only playing with a few people. So as you play the game, each turn consists of taking a card from your hand and passing it face down to the player on your left. And then you'll pick up the card that was passed to you and put it in your hand. Your objective is to create sets of 4. Now, for instance, here I have a set of 4 cards that match. You set those 4 matching cards on the table and take a baton. Now everybody else says, oh, somebody's got a match, and everybody grabs for a baton. So the player who does not grab a baton in time earns a score. It's actually kind of a penalty that signifies that they did not get a baton. Then you put all the batons back in the middle of the table, and you continue playing so that that player who made the last match, the person to their left, starts the next round. And you go around and around again, and somebody gets forward, and they lay them down, and you grab a baton, and that continues. Now, ultimately, someone will get 5 penalty points, and that stands for SPOOF, spoof. 5 penalty points means that they have lost the game. So don't do that. In this case, there'll be 4 winners and 1 loser. Now, actually, this game was first published in 1911 under the name Pig. And as they play the game exactly the same way, except instead of 5 points to become the pig, to become the loser, you could amass 10 points. And now, this game could be played with a regular poker deck. Sans jokers, I guess. And if you don't have these little batons, you could probably use spoons. What? Somebody's already done that? I was really surprised to find out that the game of spoons was not recorded in Hoyle's Encyclopedia of Card Games until 1974. I would have thought it was way older than that. It was listed there as a derivation of the game Donkey, which was the same game, but instead of spelling spoof or spoon, you had to spell the word donkey in order to lose. And donkey apparently dates back to the early 1940s. Now in 1950, Milton Bradley released another game with the name Spoof, but this one was a little longer name. It was actually called Li'l Abner's Spoof Game, Dog Patch Style. Anybody familiar with Al Cap's Li'l Abner comic strip from the 50s would definitely be familiar with this. And of course there's the stage play, Li'l Abner, that was very, very popular in the 60s. Now this game had 40 cards in it, 4 each of 10 of the characters from the comic strip. I could not find rules for this game. The Board Game Geek database doesn't include an entry for this, but I would guess with 4 of each character card it probably plays just like the earlier Spoof from 1918. But then in 1964, Carol Burnett lent her name and likeness to a game called Spoof, but it was a completely different kind of a game than the original Spoof. It looked like this. It included a deck of cards numbered 1 through 40, and the objective for each of the players was to get rid of the cards that they held. Now, I don't have a deck of cards from the Carol Burnett game, but I have these cards from the game, and they're numbered 1 through 40. I'll go ahead and use those to demonstrate, even though you can't read them very well. The cards are thoroughly shuffled, and then one card goes on one side, one card goes on the other side, and these are the limits of the cards that you can play in the center. Okay, here's how that works. Each player gets a hand of 5. We'll just deal out a few here. So here's basically how each turn goes. Start out by drawing a card from the draw pile. You look over your cards and see what you have that goes between these two cards. Okay, that would be a 33, and I don't have a 33 in my hand. So my alternative move is to play a card that changes the limits. The 22 here. Okay, now my opponent plays a card, takes a card, first part of the turn. Now the opponent has to play between 22 and 32, so there's a 29. Allows me to play another card, and a 31. I still can play another card and change the limit, so I'm going to change it to a 4 because I have a lot of really low cards. So that means I can go out on the next hand. Back to me again. Take a card. An 11. See what that does. Opponent takes a card. Opponent can still play the 15, which allows me to play another card. So I'm going to go back down to the 5, like so. Take a card to start my turn. I can still play the 12 because it's between those two limits. I can play the 14. That's my extra turn. And I can play the 20. I can play the 20. And I can play another turn. I can play the 7. Now with more players, obviously, it gets a little bit more exciting because you're competing around the table and can kind of force people to have to play certain cards and such to stop your neighbor and that sort of thing. Kind of a clever little game, and I think Carol Burnett should be proud to have her picture on the box. And that's about all I know about Spoof. Hey, just a quick interrupt here. I discovered as I was doing the final edits another game called Spoof. This one is by a publisher called Inspiration Play. It's a family bluffing game, apparently with one-word clues, and it looks like a full-on party game. These folks here seem to be having a great time. So there's another game called Spoof. Now back to our regularly scheduled program. So if you get a chance to play any of these variations on Spoof, let me know in the comments what you like or dislike about these games. But you know what I always say, whatever you play, be sure to play every day. This grabbing things nature of the original Spoof, grabbing the baton out of the middle of the table, made its way into some other games, of course, through the years. But here's one that Parker Brothers did, Zuma. It is another one of those match the cards and grab your stick. But the addition to this over Spoof was that the sticks have different colors, and whichever stick you grab can affect the scoring of the hand of cards or the meld of cards that you put on the table. So it's a little bit more than just everybody wins, one person loses kind of a scenario. Another game called Jungle Speed, which I thought I had a copy of, but I couldn't find it in my collection. That met with some popularity the first part of the century, and it was a similar situation where you get the right combination of cards and you'd be the first to grab the stick, something to that effect. But there was only one stick in that game. And then also, you may remember the grabbing things being applied to a race game here with Hurry Cup. That met with a little bit of popularity back 2008, I think it was, from Hurricane Games. But generally, I don't have too many of these grabbing things games because although I like grabbing things, I just don't like grabbing things under pressure in a game, I guess. So there you go.